Meet Ventures is an innovation consultancy firm, so we specialize in helping listed companies, MNCs, government agencies to work with startups in the region. So what does innovation consultancy mean, right? It means that when a corporate or MNC, when they have certain challenges, some pain points or problems that they would like to solve, maybe they might not be able to solve it fast enough, or certain limitations within their own organization structure might limit them from doing it themselves. That's where we come in and we help them to work with external parties such as startups to solve those problems. So examples include we have helped a Tokyo Stock Exchange listed company to work with startups from Southeast Asia in particular, and right now we are running an accelerator program for them. So this is the core of what we do. One of the things we do is we help them to work with corporates who are interested to partner with them from a technology perspective. So an example would be the corporates providing technology to help the startups to build their existing products. So that's from a product development perspective. Another thing that we help startups is also to help them to get access to strategic funding from the corporates. That's another aspect of it. And the third thing that we do is also to help startups to strategize and improve on their business models. So these are all things that we help the startups do. So you can think of us as the middleman between the corporates as well as the startups.
So I was conducting a startup workshop in Batam, right? In one of the entrepreneurship incubators, and I received an SMS. Singapore is going to close its borders. Right? I said I should get myself out, right? And get myself to the safety of my own country, which I know Singapore would be very safe.
So I think Meet Ventures is very lucky because during this period we actually managed to grow in terms of number of employees, in terms of number of clients. It's partly also due to the nature of our work. Most of our clients are based overseas. They are from countries like Korea, Japan. Prior to COVID, we have already been doing a lot of our engagements, our discussions via Zoom and online channels. The only difference now is that we are unable to fly over, and our clients, I think so far during the COVID period, only one client managed to fly over to Singapore to meet us in person. Prior to COVID, these engagements, face-to-face engagements, were more frequent. After COVID, not so frequent.
The changes were not that drastic, right? Because so fortunately or unfortunately, Meet Ventures was and still is building itself. So I think number one, we were not very much affected by concrete plans, because plans are not concrete when you are growing a business. Sometimes you say go with the flow. You have some plans, but you go with the flow. So I think for us, there's still certain level of fluidity. There's still levels of flexibility. So I think when such unforeseen circumstances happen, it did not really thwart us.
We tried to think of ways to go around it, because we aren't able to reach out to some of the clients or potential clients directly. What we did was we tried to reach out to them through intermediaries. So people that we already know, or other corporates that we already know and have a relationship with, and through them we reach out to new ones. So I guess for Meet Ventures, we pride ourselves on innovation. So with COVID, there are definitely some limitations, but we had to learn how to find ways to overcome some of these limitations as well. And some of the ways that we did it is through finding partners. We relied a lot more on partners in terms of relationship building during this period as compared to face-to-face prior to COVID.
I'm proud to say that Meet Ventures is a product of the pandemic in that sense, because the business grew, right?
Previously, we did that by flying down to different countries around the region, meeting the startups face-to-face, and establishing a relationship with them. But because of COVID, we weren't able to travel, and because of that, we also decided that we had to think of different ways to reach out to startups from around the region. So what we did was we started to establish partnerships with top organizations around the region. Examples include like Magic from Malaysia, Startup Brunei from Brunei, Philippines Software Industry Association from the Philippines. So we signed MOUs with them and we got them to reach out to these startups on our behalf. And then once this organization partners manage to identify these startups, they introduce them to us, we have a Zoom call, and we were able to take things forward from there. So I think this was one of the key unexpected outcomes from COVID which benefited our business.
In every challenge, there would be opportunities. I mean, that's how it is. And I think that was something that we were also kind of open to.
So I would say that at the moment, almost all our clients are probably about 70-80% of them are outside of Singapore. And I think that did help us from a COVID perspective because since our clients are already from overseas, right, it didn't really affect us that much when COVID hit because we were already used to Zoom meetings, we were already used to video conferences and calls.
Fortunately for us, we did not have any companies that took a U-turn. In difficult times, companies would reduce anything that's a cost center, right? As much as possible, where they can cut costs, they would. But in our case, since the programs that we're doing helps MNCs work with startups to generate more revenue, maybe in that sense, companies are probably more open because I think at the end of the day, these are operations that will continue to help them to enhance their earnings.
Meet Ventures is in the consulting business. In the consulting business, one limitation is that it's not very scalable in the sense that we are essentially providing expertise and our time to help our clients. But the only way to grow the business is by employing more good people. In the future, one thing that Meet Ventures would like to do is also to productize some of our offerings so that we can scale. If you have some of your services in the form of software and you're able to turn part of that into a software that your customers can use. So with one software, you can sell to 100 customers. But right now, if you were to do it yourself, individually, personally, the maximum maybe you can only serve the needs of 5 to 10 customers.
What we see today, the emergence of certain types of jobs in areas such as programming. We have a lot of jobs that demand basically data analysts. We're seeing so I think I wouldn't say that the pandemic had caused the emergence of these jobs. Tech 4.0 was already emerging at that time, but probably the pandemic just accelerated this growth.
It probably hurt the companies that are more hyper-local.
What do you mean by that?
So I would say that startups or companies that are focused more on just the Singapore market itself and in certain industries, they are a bit more affected. But for many companies like Meet Ventures that are already, prior to COVID, were already targeting foreign customers, foreign clients, and are already used to liaising with them and meeting their needs, I would say COVID did not pose too much of a disruption.
The ones that I see that usually either they decide to close, and I think this was very evident in I would say in April 2020, there was an news article by Straits Times that I think 8,000 over companies had basically closed down. I would say that probably these were mainly traditional companies, right? And personally, I know of several companies, and one company I know, just to give as an example, it is a tourism company. and as a result of COVID-19, they were not able to continue their tour operator business, and they pivoted to now become a cleaning company.
Okay, so I would position this in two aspects. So the first part of it is when during the initial phases of getting to know the client. I think during that part, it's very important to get to know the clients and meeting them face to face to build a personal touch. But once that has been established, I think the second part, where you are going through the execution of the programs, execution of your service to them, it's not so important because by then you can do a lot of things via Zoom. So for us, we were quite lucky because for Meet Ventures, we already managed to establish the trust and the relationship prior to COVID. So during the COVID season, it was more the execution phase.
The startups that I mentor, either at work or outside of work, are basically more innovative, or they are more technology savvy. So I guess in that sense, when COVID-19 happened, their business operations isn't. I mean, to say that, I think to say that whether are you completely affected, I think if it's an innovative or technologically savvy business, I would say everyone would have been affected, but I don't think that they would be affected so badly that their business would be like at a junction of either 100% I'm not going to continue, or let's pivot. It's quite common where job seekers would probably join a company, work for a while, a few months, and then when they see another company offers something better, jump, right? I would say in that aspect, because of the pandemic, they shouldn't have that mentality of if there's a better employer, I just jump, right? Because I think from one aspect, there might not be number one, sufficient jobs. I think having that kind of mindset itself might be quite dangerous in times like this. Good to ask themselves, right? If I need to understand what the job market wants today, and I need to prepare myself for that. So this is what I would suggest. For you to know what the job market prefers today and prepare yourself for that.
The next few years and in future, technology as we are seeing it right now is moving at a very, very, very fast pace. Many things can change. The technologies that we are learning now, the technologies that we are using now, in a couple of years' time, it could become obsolete. And unless we have this attitude of being ready for unexpected changes, we might be at a disadvantage. So this is something that we tell ourselves as well every day as an innovation consultancy firm, and it's something that we tell all our employees. We must always be aware, at least aware, of the latest that's happening today, not just locally but also in the region and globally, and better prepare ourselves. In case one day something changes or certain situations, a new technology arises and makes certain old technologies obsolete, we need to be ready for that and not be taken by surprise.
That kind of mindset, that kind of lifelong learning mindset that we must always upgrade ourselves. So be aware of what's happening, but also upgrade yourselves accordingly. Employees will be able to have access to jobs in the growth areas. If you don't have the mindset, you wouldn't even go about equipping yourself.
For Meet Ventures, we believe in taking care of our employees. During this period, we had an employee whose family was facing some personal issues. On the personal side, we did offer some personal loans to them. We also did offer salary advancements. So we paid them like 1-2 months salary in advance just to help them to tide through this crisis. Because we understand that things happen in life, and the building blocks of a company at the end of the day is the employees. If the employees do not feel safe, do not feel secure, be it in their own personal lives or in a professional setting, then they are not able to give their best to the company as well. So I think as an employer, it's our duty to take care of our employees and to help them to grow to be the best that they can be.
Again, pandemic or no pandemic, I think when we run a business, we got to be human as well. We need to understand what and this is something that my partner and I always ask our staff, what's your personal goal? So we try our best to basically meet your goals. So maybe it could be a 3 to 5 year goal. It could be, okay, we have, maybe we could have a staff who maybe wants to, personal goal is maybe be a manager, or maybe personal goal is to advance further studies, right? So we will try to help to meet those goals. Yeah. So I think it's very important when we're running business to also be human. Because at the end of the day, I think staff, when they work, they have their own problems, right? So I think when they work, is to manage their lives. So as much as possible, we can help them to live life better. We try. My partner and I, every week, we always ask our staff, so what's happening at home, right? We also want to know, because we know that what's happening at home also would affect work, right? Because our staff don't live to work for us. They work for us because they need to put food on the table, right? So I think from a business standpoint, we try to see how we can basically have a little bit of a work-life balance, right? So I think work-life balance is not just about, maybe work from home or whatever, but I think it's also to show that the employer genuinely cares, right? So I think that's why every week we always ask, like, hey, how's your weekend? Like, what do you guys do, right? I'm sure we all may have heard of company policies that say no work on weekends, but boss still tax, right? So as much as possible, I think we do respect their weekends, right? And then we say, okay, we even tell them, hey, please enjoy the weekend, because when they enjoy the weekend, they'll be more productive during weekdays.
There is no right time or wrong time to start a business. If you want to start a business, go ahead. Even in the most drastic of circumstances or situations, there will be opportunities. The only thing is to do proper research, to talk to your customers, really understand that what you are trying to solve, the problem that you are trying to solve, the company that you are building is able to provide real value. So long as you are able to validate that, then go ahead and do it without fear.
Pandemic or not, we have to always be alert to see what the demands of the market is. So again, do not supply something that the market does not need, right? Of course, some people have the notion of Steve Jobs, right? He says, oh, I created the demand, but come on, we're all not Steve Jobs, right? But I think what's most important, and rule 101 is always understanding what the customer wants, right? But of course, at the same time, I think there's a balance, right, of understanding what the customer wants, but you need to also ask yourself whether you are the right person or company to provide what the customer wants. So I think it is a balance of these two.
One skill that I think every entrepreneur and innovation professional should have as well is critical thinking skills. So what do I mean by critical thinking skills? There are a few components to it. The first part is to be able to look at a situation and understand the problem, and after understanding the problem, being able to logically and reasonably come up with steps to take to reach an ideal outcome. To have critical thinking skills also means that you have to identify what are problems with your existing solutions, to be able to think and challenge the existing norms and existing standards in your company and in your industry. And that is the only way for progress. Bringing back to the COVID situation, one reason why, because of COVID, it has accelerated the adoption of technology in many old school industries or traditional industries, for example the F&B industry, is because people are left without a choice. They have to do it. If they don't do it, their business might not be able to survive. For example, using of QR codes instead of physical menus to scan, and now it becomes a digital menu. For example, ordering online, for example, e-commerce. Many traditional companies are now starting to do that, and they might not have done it if not because of COVID. But if without COVID, if they were able to adopt this, they were still able to critically think about their business, about their industry, and be a first mover, I think they will be able to have an even greater advantage.
It definitely is. I mean, coming from me, I worked first before, starting a business, right? And I worked for at least 5 years. It definitely is easier to work first than and then later on venture into your own. So definitely, I feel that it is far easier to work first and then later start your own business. Gaining some work experience first before running your own business always does help, because you have some domain expertise, right, before you start your own business in the domain that you are good at.
One of the key lessons that COVID has taught us is that if we don't move fast enough, two things can happen. One thing is that something unexpected like COVID could come in and force us to make the next move and make the change. Or by the time we see all our competitors doing it, then we make the move. But by then it might be a bit too late. Then we will become the latecomers. So to be able to critically think, identify the problems, identify potential solutions, and use this to improve your existing business, your existing company, your existing solutions. I think this is one of the key skills required in the next few years and even in the longer period.
What will also benefit our youths will be a better understanding of Asia, and primarily the ASEAN, China, India region.
So how do we know that they are good startups? We look at two things. So the first thing, it's looking at their numbers, their traction so far. Numbers don't lie. So if they've been around in business for 2 years or 3 years and they've hit $1 million and they are growing very quickly at a double-digit growth rate, then that is definitely a good company. So the second thing we look at is the team, especially the CEO, because we believe that everything rises and falls on leadership. So if the founder and the CEO, for example, has successfully started and exited a company before, it means that they have done it, been there, done that. The second time they are doing it this time around, most likely their chances of success will be higher. There are some other things that we look at, but generally it's always with regards to the CEO and the founding team. So that's the second thing that we look at.
Singapore's growth was very much fueled by MNCs in the 70s, entrance into Singapore, set up shop, right? But I think how we're going to grow now is, of course, we still welcome MNCs, but I think we also welcome investments into Singapore, where Singapore is kind of like signaling to its corporations, big and small, is to basically look at Asia as its oyster, right? And particularly the ASEAN, China, India region, where corporations are kind of encouraged to set up shop, to basically have operations in any of the ACI countries, ASEAN, China, India region, outside of Singapore, while having Singapore as your headquarters.
For Meet Ventures, generally the stage at which we start working with some of the startups, it's when they are about 2 to 3 years old. So when they are 2 to 3 years old, generally by then they already have good revenues coming in. They are maybe most likely already sustainable, profitable, and they are at the verge of wanting to expand. So by 2 years or 3 years, they probably have quite a number of clients in the local markets. They are looking to expand out of their local markets, and that's where they need to work with strategic partners. Strategic partners including maybe some of the corporates. And this is also a stage whereby corporates love the most. They love startups that have already got the initial traction, and that's when they want to work with them. So we come in and we help them to work together.